Greetings all, and welcome back to Ramblings, an unrepented geeking podcast.
Everybody get up, it's time to slam now. We got a real jam going down. Welcome to the Space Jam. Here's your chance, do your dance at the Space Jam. Alright.
As always, I'm your host, Shaun Cronenfeld, and before we get down to business, I suppose I should address a request that I have received from a number of you that claim to be my fans. But you couldn't really be my fans, because if you were my fans, you wouldn't have requested this. You monsters! But okay, since you insist, I will be reviewing Pixels. I'll be going to see it tomorrow night. I have to record this before I see it because I don't know if I'll be in any state to actually talk after seeing it, or breathe, or think. I suspect I will be left a comatose near vegetable for a considerable amount of time. And because of that, you won't be seeing Pixels review until next week, because if I reviewed it right after seeing it, assuming I was still capable of human speech, it would probably just be me cursing away left and right non-stop. Just, mindlessly, pointlessly uttering whatever horrible thing I can in succession. So, fine. You guys win. You get in your way. I will go experience the hell that is Pixels, because, the reviews are already coming out. This isn't just another bad movie. Oh, no. Oh, no. But okay. However, I draw the line at Sharknado 3. I haven't seen the first Sharknado. I haven't seen the second Sharknado, and I sure as hell am not going to see the third. I don't know if this is the time or place. I despise this series. The first movie was just another one of the countless schlocky, awful, bad monster films that Sci-Fi Channel has been putting out for years, and many of which have shark in the name, but somehow this one caught an extra hold, probably because even by sci-fi standards, it was a pretty fucking stupid concept. And now all of you made it so popular, and now they went off and then they made a sequel, and this time around, they were self-aware. And you know what's worse than a bad movie? A bad movie that is self-aware enough to think that being bad is a good thing. Not understanding that we weren't laughing with the original, and when I say we, I don't mean me, that people weren't laughing at the original, with the original, they were laughing at it. And so now they're all smarmy and meta, and oh god, just even seeing the trailers for Sharknado 2 and 3, so no, I draw the line there. I'll review Pixels. That is in my bulwark on a number of levels, because video games and movies and all that stuff, and fine, I'll give you a Pixels review, but I draw the line at Sharknado. I didn't even go see the riff tracks of Sharknado, because there's no point in making fun of Sharknado. Spoonie, he put it best when, these movies are mocking-proof, because their very existence is a mockery. Largely of the human experience and the reason and point behind living and belief in a justice and God and hope and Basically, I'm not fond of anything about these films, least of which that they've become so popular, and I would like the name sci-fi, or even the channel's horribly bastardized, aborted version of the name Siffy. I would still like those particular letters and that particular concept to mean more than just a stupid as shit shark movie with tornadoes thrown in, because we are truly creatively bankrupt. So, okay. Moving on. Got a lot of ground to cover. Look for Pixels review next week. Look for Sharknado 3 review. Never. And don't even get me started on the just announced Sharknado 4. Jesus Christ, people. I'm very disappointed in all of you. All of you. Especially you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. You know why. Anyways, I am going to review, in this episode, briefly at least, Ant-Man and the third Steven Universe bomb, the third Steven bomb. But before I get to that, I gotta unleash at least a little bit more bile, because I gotta talk about a rumor that's going around that came out today. And that's namely that, God help us all, we could be getting a Space Jam 2. Basically, LeBron James, coming off his surprisingly good performance in Trainwreck, has been signed to a multi-picture deal. Actually, it goes beyond just movies. He basically signed a deal with Warner Brothers Entertainment that spans movies, television, and digital content, whatever that means. So, because of this, and because it's Warner Brothers and all that, immediately talk is now spinning out of control that this means we're getting a Space Jam 2. And it's possible. The rumors continue to build, and it looks like, yeah, that might actually be happening, and oh, dear God. I just... Where do I even begin? Look, let's be clear here. The original Space Jam is a terrible, terrible movie. Not even a so bad it's good movie, just a, oh God, this is awful, and what are you doing to some of my favorite characters? It is probably the worst thing to ever feature the Looney Tunes, and I can already hear some of you going, but Shaun, what about Back in Action? Well, you know what? Back in Action is not a good movie. It isn't. But at least Back in Action gets Bugs and Daffy more or less right, has some actual funny moments. Every time I see the car chase scene, especially Bugs and Daffy's reactions to it, like the bit where they sign each other's will with this just total deadpan look on their faces, I laugh. I laugh at that. And then you have the terrific chase by Elmer Fudd of them, through the paintings and taking on the different art styles and all that. There are moments in Back in Action that legitimately capture the spirit and tone and essence of what makes the Looney Tunes characters so great. There is nothing like that in Space Jam. Space Jam Space Jam doesn't get any of these characters and woefully misuses them. And clearly doesn't care about the Looney Tunes because it spends 20 minutes walking around, following around the NBA players who've had their abilities stolen and watching them forlornly be unable to play basketball. And all the time, anytime I see that, all I can think of is, why do you think we give a shit about what's happening to these guys? Hi, I'm here to see the Looney Tunes do loony things as tunes. I am not here to see morose NBA basketball players who couldn't act their way out of paper bags attempt to act. Oh, that's just the beginning. I mean, Space Jam, again, let's look at it, the Nostalgia Critic just reviewed Osmosis Jones. Osmosis Jones is also not a good movie, but at least it's got good-looking animation and some legitimately gorgeous visual moments. And for the most part, Space Jam looks really cheap. Like, for instance, the crowd during the big game scene. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but they basically pull the old video game trick, or the old cheap animation trick of just filling it with the same characters, ad nauseum, cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste. Even if this was probably technically before cut and paste, I don't know. The point is, that kind of shit's okay if it's like the 60s and you're doing a Hanna-Barbera cartoon on, like a 20-cent budget or something along that lines. It is not acceptable when you are doing this giant, huge, big budget. Everything about Space Jam comes off as terrible and cheap. And the characters don't really feel like themselves at all. Bugs especially. And it's the same thing that really got me about the most recent Looney Tunes show. If you don't know, the one where they're all in suburbia. I mean, look, fine, you want to take them out of their wacky antics and try and do a different take. I'm okay with that, but they totally didn't understand Bugs Bunny. Here's the thing about Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny is one of the biggest badasses in all the cartoons. He is. Bugs is too cool for the room. But what makes him so awesome is he doesn't do this by being the strongest or the fastest or having lots of guns or weapons. No, he does it with his brain. Bugs will outsmart the crap out of you. He will, and he's not aggressive. As long as you leave Bugs alone, okay. As long as you're not being a jerk, Bugs ain't gonna bug you. Pun unintended. But you mess with Bugs, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it hard. You're gonna get the anvil right on top of the head. That's what makes Bugs so great. I remember as a kid, the couple of cartoons where Bugs actually loses in the end, like the one where he thinks he's Elmer Fudd, I literally got upset. I mean, look, I was like 6 years old, but I loved Bugs Bunny, and seeing him lose left me literally crying. And to this day, I get uncomfortable anytime Bugs, doesn't win by the end. I'm okay if he takes his lumps from time to time, but in the end, Bugs comes back and he wins. Bugs is awesome. He's not the straight man. He's not just there the guy to react to your humor. No, he's the guy who's giving you the raised eyebrow. He's the guy who's breaking the fourth wall. He's the guy who's like, well, of course this means war, and then backs it up. And Space Jam just did nothing with Bugs. And even Daffy. I mean, Daffy in Space Jam is too much like Daffy in that aforementioned Looney Tunes show. Daffy needs to be more than just a jerk. He needs to be an entertaining jerk. He needs to be so ridiculously over the top, you just can't help but smile when he gets his comeuppance. If he's just mildly annoying, then he's just mildly annoying. No, Daffy goes beyond that. Daffy is ego run wild. Daffy is so completely sold on Daffy that he can't understand why the world doesn't always go his way. And again, Space Jam, just bland, empty jokes. And the rest of the characters are even worse. I mean, Porky gets, 5 lines? I mean, biggest problem with Back in Action, not enough Porky. I like Porky. Porky's a fun character, especially when you put him together with Daffy. And then if you put him together, the three of them together, maybe it's my Tiny Toon fandom showing, but I love those three characters together, even if it's just in kid form. Tiny Toons. That's a rant for another day. Seriously, start doing stuff with Tiny Toons again. They're great characters. Anyways, so Space Jam is not a good movie. It's not a fun movie. Space Jam is a wasted opportunity. And Space Jam exists because of an admittedly fairly clever ad. But as it turns out, what works for like a 2-minute ad doesn't work when stretched out to 90 minutes or however long. I remember when I first saw Space Jam, I felt like it was 3 hours because it just went on and on and on. And I was a kid still. I was a teenager at least when it came out. And I loved the Looney Tunes. So, I mean, and I was not as discerning as I am now. I wasn't quite the critic I was today where I'm like super, hard on anything and overly critical even some might say. But I was bored throughout large parts of Space Jam, and I remember coming out of the theater going, how did you screw this up? How did you screw this up? And partially, yes, it's because Michael Jordan can't act at all. The man has a sort of charisma, and he can do okay, again, in an ad where all you're asking him to do is raise an eyebrow and look kind of, But the man is not an actor, but that would have been okay if we'd focused more on the tunes. So, I've long been a believer that not all remakes and sequels are automatically bad, especially when said remake/sequel is perhaps able to correct the mistakes of the original. I think something like Mystery Men is ripe for a remake. That, the Ben Stiller, Janine Garofalo, William H. Macy superhero comedy film from, 1999. That's not a good film. It's not a bad film. It's an oddball film, okay? And it doesn't quite work, and there are problems with it, and I also think it was ahead of its time, and I think if somebody in a couple of years wanted to get an equally good cast, because the best part about Mystery Men is unquestionably its amazing cast, if you want to get an equally good cast of today and try and redo it with a better script, I really think you might be able to pull it off. I think there is room for a remake of Mystery Men. So you might say, well, can't we say the same thing about Space Jam? Not really, because Space Jam is just a naked... there's no... This is a concept born out of an advertisement, and yes, good movies have been made off of less. You look at Pirates of the Caribbean as the the ultimate example, but there's nothing inherently that works with this concept. And you already tried it once, you're not going to get it better a second time. Look, LeBron James was legitimately funny in Trainwreck. Now, whether or not that means he can actually be a decent actor going forward, or this was just the right place at the right time with the right director and the right crew, remains to be seen, but fine. He wouldn't be the first sports star to successfully transition into acting. And based off of Trainwreck, I can see, and of course his pre-existing popularity, I could see why Warner Brothers, why Time Warner would want to sign a deal with him and try it out and see what they could do with him. Because maybe he can. When backed by the right director and the right script and the right supporting cast, maybe he can front a movie. Maybe he can be an effective comedic character. And if you want to go the big fantasy route for his first film, I can also get that, because, again, use the spectacle to distract from the potentially mediocre acting, or to give him a little bit chance to get more comfortable, because it's one thing to be a supporting player in a larger movie, and it's another thing to carry a movie. I mean, a vast, vast difference. In the same way that it's one thing to be amusing in a 2-minute cartoon, and another thing to be amusing in a 90-minute film. But that fantasy shouldn't be Looney Tunes. It didn't work the first time, and I don't see why anybody thinks it would work the second time. Looney Tunes have become such... They've grown so far from who they are as characters, what made them work at their best, that before you could ever hope to do a Space Jam movie, you need to do a full animated Looney Tunes movie that really gets the characters back to their core, or do a bunch more shorts. Like, I remember... Like, what's going on with Mickey Mouse right now? We've been getting a series of these wonderfully, kind of, at times, messed up, almost depraved shorts featuring Mickey and the crew. And they kind of, they've really done a good job of revitalizing the character, making him more modern, making his supporting cast more modern, being a little bit more edgy, without losing the core of the character. Or take the 10-minute Muppet pilot, which is up now online. If you haven't seen it, they released earlier this week, ABC TV on their YouTube account released the 10-minute pitch reel, basically the 10-minute proto-pilot that was what sold the network on doing a new Muppet TV show. There was not originally plans to release it online. They did, however, after a lot of demand, and I'm really glad they did, because it's a really amusing bit of 10 minutes, and you can already feel it. This is a Muppets that's a little bit more edgy, again. This is a Muppets that's a little bit more adult, but not in the nasty way, but more in the... They're dealing with a bit more mature material, and the characters aren't just... They have a bit more of an edge. That's really the best way I could describe it, but they're still the Muppets. They're still the heart, they're still the warmth, they're still the relatable, enjoyable characters. They just feel a bit more fleshed out, a bit more real. And that's great, and you could totally do that with the Looney Tunes. That's what the recent show tried to do, and for my money, for the most part, it didn't work. I won't say there were never good moments. I actually liked what they did with Lola Bunny. That actually took a character who was just there, let's talk about Space Jams, just there to be a disturbing sex object, or really just to bring in the girl, to be the token girl. And they made her actually interesting, but that's why I'm saying... The idea of just going right now to a Space Jam 2 is a horrible idea. I think ever doing a Space Jam 2. We've done the whole basketball sports thing. If you want to do a LeBron James Looney Tunes movie, fine, but come up with a different concept. Come up with a better concept. Come up with something that can actually work. But before that, come up with a Looney Tunes movie that can stand on its own. Prove to everybody that these characters are still important, that they can still... become, you can still sit down kids in front of the old Looney Tunes. Some of them, getting on, some of them 50 years or more older, and they'll still laugh at them. They won't get all the jokes. Some of the more reference-heavy ones may go over their heads. They won't recognize some of the people, but the basic core that made those cartoons such wonderfully anarchic delights remain. Those cartoons hold up. But you now need something that can also adapt them for a newer age. For a new, before you try and do a movie where you bring in the live action, you bring in the questionable basketball star actor, you've got to first do something with the characters on their own. And even then, once you're done with that, no, not Space Jam 2. So, that's just my take. Unfortunately, it's looking more and more inevitable. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I would love for Space Jam 2 to be the dream Looney Tunes project we've always wanted. I do believe you could do a feature-length film with the Looney Tunes. I don't just mean shoving a bunch of random cartoons in. There's no reason the characters can't work in a longer form story if you do it right. I just don't think playing a basketball game with a live action NBA star is right in this terms. But hey, that's just my feelings on the subject. Alright, I want to end things on a more positive note, so I'm going to present quick reviews of Ant-Man and the third Steven Bomb. I'm going to be quick, partially because I've already gone nearly 20 minutes, and secondly because both have already happened a while ago. So, first of all, Ant-Man, I really enjoyed the film. Was it the best superhero film I've ever seen? No. Was it the best film I've seen this year? Again, no. Was it the best Marvel movie ever made? Definitely not. Was it even the best Marvel movie this year? No. But was it a lot of fun? Yes. Was it a film I've already seen twice and loved even more the second time? Absolutely. Now, That being said, there was definitely some problems, and I think the biggest problem with the film was how it handled the Wasp, or specifically the Hope, who will eventually become the Wasp. There is no reason that the film couldn't have had Hope get the costume during the third act, put it on, and help Scott defeat Yellow Jacket. She could have easily become the Wasp in this movie and become involved in the third act, and it would have been so much better. I mean, I'm glad that we have the promise of the Wasp coming back down the line, that they've confirmed, yes, Evangeline Lilly will be suiting up as the Wasp at some point in the future, but how much better would it have been if she had done so in this film? It feels like a real missed opportunity, especially because there's no real good reason why she wouldn't. The film's reasons for why she doesn't feel very weak sauce, and it does feel like it does some damage to the character. It doesn't ruin her any more than it ruins the movie, but it's a missed opportunity that could have made the third act even stronger. I picture, her scene, like discovering the costume in the second act during the whole training montage, and that's when she confronts Hank about her mother, and that's when she finds out, she apparently lets it go, and then instead of it being the tank that rescues them, I could see her summoning the ants, her own ants, to bring in the small version of the suit, just like they did for Scott in the prison cell earlier in the film. So, and then she as the Wasp carries out her father, and she goes to help Hank, and I think it would have even fit better. I mean, the tank gag is a good gag, don't get me wrong, but I would have gladly sacrificed that gag to have the Wasp. But we could have also cut back some on Scott's friends. I mean, don't get me wrong, Michael Pena steals every goddamn scene he's in, and if there is ever a sequel to Ant-Man, he absolutely needs to be in it. He is so funny. He really adds a lot to this film as comic relief, and he does what comic relief properly should. He relieves the tension, he humanizes the characters, he's fun, he makes the film more enjoyable. But we really didn't need as much as what we got with the other two. Again, they're not bad, they're fine, their scenes are okay, but we could have easily cut back on the whole hacking thing and then getting arrested and them escaping if it meant we could have gotten 5 minutes with Wasp and could have, changed up the finale a bit. And it could have still worked. We could have had the two of them together damaging Cross and then still him grabbing the girl, them being stuck. I mean, you could have still gotten the same, more or less, ending. You just could have had a different role for Hope, and she could have been a more active participant in the finale, and it would have been better for the character and better for the film. So that's my biggest complaint with Ant-Man. Still, overall, this was a really fun movie. I think the best thing I can say about it is that I wish this wasn't a movie. I wish this was the 2-hour pilot for the new 13-episode Netflix Ant-Man series. I know, with this cast and these level of effects, because special effects in this film are terrific. I mean, the way they handled the shrinking, and they used a real tiny camera, to film, the backdrops, to actually, so... and then use CGI to put the characters into it, and it really enhances the sense of being small and the sense of another world. And all of that probably wouldn't work in a TV series, but still, I loved the characters in this film. Everybody, including the supporting players. Just because I could have done with less of them in favor of the Wasp doesn't mean I didn't like them. I could totally see this group of characters carrying a 13-episode TV series. The idea could be, we know the guy got away with the cross particles, and you could have them tracking him down and getting into all sorts of wacky hijinks. And I think these characters in these casts, I would read an ongoing comic book about. Isn't that really what a comic book movie should feel like? More so than any other Marvel movie, this really felt like the first couple issues of the first story arc of a comic book, right down to the bit with the guest star from the Falcon, and they fight, and there's over the misunderstanding. They don't technically team up, but you basically, except for that, you still get all the fun tropes that make comic books enjoyable. And this was, I think, the smaller scale, no pun intended, really helped make this film more relatable and make it a breath of fresh air after Age of Ultron, which, again, a film I really loved, but it was good to dial back on the stakes and to make a smaller film. A film that shows that, yes, you can tell a lot of different kinds of stories within the frameworks of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So overall, I really enjoyed Ant-Man. I've already seen it twice, and FYI, I can't remember if I already said this, but when I go see Pixels this weekend, I'm buying a ticket to Ant-Man. I'm going to find a theater where the two films have similar showtimes. I'm going to buy a ticket to Ant-Man, and then I'm going to sneak into Pixels. Because I'm not going to support Pixels. And instead, I'm going to support the film that deserves to be number one this weekend, goddammit. If you want to go see a spectacle this weekend, do not see Pixels, see Ant-Man. Ant-Man is the film you need. Ant-Man is the hero we need. Just don't see Pixels. Seriously though, Ant-Man, great film. If you're still on the fence about it, if you haven't seen it yet, go. Go right now. You will enjoy it. If you enjoy superheroes at all, if you've ever even slightly enjoyed a Marvel film before, I think you will get a laugh out of Ant-Man. You will find yourself surprisingly caught up. You will find yourself surprisingly attached to the characters, and you will find yourself laughing far more than you would have thought. This is a very good film. And considering everything that went around it, that's remarkable. And no, FYI, I don't care what the other version of Ant-Man might have been. That's an alternate universe. That's not this universe. I'm judging the Ant-Man that is. And the Ant-Man that is a very good film. Go see it. Alright, finally, let's talk a bit about the Steven Bomb 3, The Week of Sardonyx. I am, of course, talking about the recent week of new episodes of Steven Universe, aired by Cartoon Network. If you don't know what Steven Universe is by now, I'm kind of impressed that you're watching this, because, A, I've already reviewed Steven Universe a number of times in the course of my various shows. First episode of Unrepentant Geeking took a look at the first episode of Steven Universe, so, there you go. And in general, the circles that I run in are real big right now on Steven Universe, and with good reason. So, I'm just going to assume you know what Steven Universe is. I'm also thinking it's likely you've already seen the episodes, but if you haven't, well, you really should go back and start at the beginning, because, you don't have to. Steven Universe is fairly accessible, but these 5 episodes will have a lot more impact if you're already familiar with the characters, because this is something that's been a long time coming. The Week of Sardonyx deals with a serious rift building between 2 of the crystal gems, and this is a moment that, as a fan of the show, I've been long anticipating, because there was no way these writers weren't going to eventually have a serious rift occur between some of these characters. They're two different, two distinctive personalities, and especially what they've been doing with Pearl, where Pearl has been becoming increasingly, I guess, unhinged or uncertain, or down on herself. She's been losing cohesion, emotionally more and more lately. Her episodes have been more and more about how she's never really gotten over the death of Rose, and how that continues to haunt her, how that continues to drive her, and how she really needs to figure out who she is, not just in the context of Rose, but in her own terms. Because Rose is gone, and Rose isn't coming back, and even if Rose was, Pearl will never truly be happy until Pearl is happy with herself. I know. Very basic pop psychology, but it's true, and what I like is, there's this show, Garnet actually says that in the last episode of the Steven Bomb. This particular Steven Bomb. But the show also doesn't just tell us this. It shows us it repeatedly. It shows us how and why these characters have to come to terms with themselves, and not just... They're not who they were. We still don't know a lot about the Gym life on the Gym homeworld, what it was like before they became to Earth, but we've gotten enough of a sense that it seems like the Gyms, as a race, live a very hierarchical, caste-driven system, and we know that, there are apparently, or at least it certainly seems like, there are, some of the Gyms get mass-produced. Like, Pearl talks about how she's just a Pearl, and it's the latest reference to the idea that there may be a lot of Pearls out there, and that these Pearls are if they are like a brand, like clones almost, they're not warriors by nature. And what's interesting is how, again, the show reinforces this actually with Peridot, because in the last episode, she fires off a laser from her hand, and she's as shocked when she does it as they are. What I think we're seeing in Peridot, in a way, is a mirror of what happened to the Gyms themselves. There's a definite sense that, we know that I don't think it's also normal that characters live permanently fused in the way that Ruby and Sapphire do as Garnet. So, and then of course there's the whole fact that Amethyst is just trying to figure out who the hell she is. All 3 of these characters have clearly, before this, in the lead up to where the show starts, have had to adapt and change and become different from necessarily what their function was in a variety of ways. And of all of them, clearly, because Garnet is born out of love and out of a healthy, stable relationship, she's done the best of this. For her, change is good. Change is what she wants. And so she's had the best time adapting. And we can see that in the flashbacks. She's, especially in the previous flashback where she teaches Greg about fusion and all that, we can really start to see Pearl as the wise one, as the one who gets humanity the most. And Amethyst had that moment earlier. We've now had several episodes where Amethyst has already had to come to terms with that. But Amethyst is also younger than the others, and she doesn't really have the same kind of preconceived notion or baggage that, say, Pearl does. Amethyst is just trying to figure out who she is, but she doesn't have the weight of expectation necessarily dragging her down in the same way that Pearl does. And more than anything, this Steven Baum really showcased how Pearl is at a crossroads. And we by the end of it, we seem to have come to a healthier place. But I don't know. I don't think we're done yet. I think Pearl has started to realize what she needs to do, but I don't think she's there yet. And it could be a long journey. And part of what I like, by stretching across the fight between the gyms, between Pearl and Garnet, it's not just that, oh good, it's serialized storytelling, and I do like serialized storytelling, and it's serialized in a way that Steven Universe hasn't always been. These 5 episodes form a very definite arc, and a straight arc across, in a way that in the past Steven Universe hasn't always done. There have been episodes that have arced, but oftentimes we get completely unrelated episodes in between. All the episodes that aired this week are basically indirectly or directly related to the aftermath of Sardonyx, and the aftermath of basically Pearl's betrayal of Garnet. They don't always deal super directly with that, but they all are fallout from that. They're all events that might not be happening if that hadn't first occurred. And it's interesting to see Steven Universe do it, because this is serialization done right, because at the same time, you can still enjoy most of these episodes. Like, Garnet, the whole Onion episode works more or less on its own. If you know what happened, then it's even stronger, but you don't have to. That's how serialization at its best should work. That there are ongoing threads that, if you've been following along, inform and entertain you and make things seem deeper, but at the same time, if you're just coming into it, it's still approachable and relatable. And in that sense, I really feel like this bomb feels like this is the writers truly coming into their own. They clearly have achieved a real mastery of this world, of the people in it, and how to tell a story across multiple episodes. And I'm very excited where we go from here. I don't know if you've seen it, but at Comic-Con they released like an extended, it's clearly a clip from an episode, but it's also an extended version of the opening theme. And there are some key imagery, including what looks like a sneak peek of Yellow Diamond. I won't go into specifics. I will say, if you want to go completely spoiler-free, you shouldn't watch it. If you don't, the spoilers are minimum. The episode itself is clearly a flashback episode, okay? So, but fine. What we also get to see is we kind of see the key aspects that are driving these characters, and it's really interesting to see it put into this light. And the bomb, again, I think we're headed for some exciting stuff, both in terms of world building and mythology, and the overall arc and the plot, and that's good and all. And I tend to be a guy who likes that kind of stuff, but even better in terms of the characters. I'm really hopeful that when we come back, when the new episodes continue, things aren't just going to reset to the status quo. I mean, things will hopefully be more balanced. Things are hopefully going to be running more smoothly again. But I'm hoping to see the changes in our 3 gyms and in Steven reflected going forward. And it's something the show has done very well. It's, the gradual growth and evolution of all the different characters. Or in the case of Greg, the revealing of the layers that make it clear he's not just this laid-back, lazy layabout. He's deeper and more, he's kind of become the second heart of the show behind Steven. And that's fascinating. So, overall, I thought the third Steven bomb was another success. That said, I kind of hope we're done with the bombs for a while. Look, I'm glad they did these particular episodes as a 1-week thing, because I think trying to stretch out the fighting between the gyms across multiple weeks would have been kind of torturous, and could have negatively impacted our enjoyment of the show, because we would have been too focused on, oh my god, how is this going to play out, and we're like, the Onion episode might have felt like a diversion, and the Flash, the history of Beach City might felt like a diversion, when all we really want is get back to Sardonyx and get back to Pearl and all that. And so I think doing these particular episodes as a week-long event was a smart move, but at the same time, I don't want us to burn through Steven so fast. I mean, at this, we know they're running out of episodes, and that could mean that we're headed towards a long hiatus. Like, we could be headed towards a year hiatus of Steven Universe because of all these bombs, and that to me would not be an ideal occurrence, because I do not want to go that long without more Steven Universe. So overall, Steven Universe continues to be one of the best shows on TV, animated or otherwise. If you are not watching it, you are missing out. And if you don't believe me, go check out the various reviews and like the Nostalgia Critics vlogs and all that stuff. This really is a wonderful, wondrous, terrific show. The first few episodes don't necessarily... They only hint at the depth that is to come. They're still very fun and amusing, but they don't, I don't think, really get across just how deep this show is going to be, and just... This is one of the best shows for representation on TV, and it shows how representation doesn't have to be this anchor around a neck, and how it can actually enhance. How having different characters of different, physical types, and sexualities, and race, and all that, and genders, can totally make a show better. And that you can have female leads, and you can have female characters, and it doesn't, you don't have to be tokenism. I mean, Steven Universe is just one of the best examples of how you do something like this right. And I really hope it becomes a model for animated shows going forward, because I don't think there's a other show on today, especially animated, that couldn't learn something from Steven Universe. Alright, that's going to do it for this episode of Ramblings. Thanks for putting up with all my raging and kind of going off on a lot of different topics, but hey, name of the show, Ramblings, so you only have yourself to blame. I don't even know what that means. Seriously, though, come back here later this weekend for at last the much, much belated June reviews of the Secret Wars tie-ins. I know I've said this several times before, but now, this time, they're actually already recorded. I've already recorded all the reviews. I just got to edit them together, put them together into the video, so they are done. They are done. It's just, well, it's not done, but the recording is done. The most time-consuming part is done. It is coming this weekend, I promise. And then next week, if I survive... Pixels. Look, guys, I want you to promise me something. If I don't come back from this, I want you to tell my family I love them, okay? I want you to tell your families you love them, because we don't say that to each other enough, damn it. And you never know what's going to take your life. Like a really bad movie could come along and just leave you in a comatose, drooling state forever, and you wouldn't have told your family you love them. And Sorry, I'm getting a little bit emotional. It's kind of like, I'm about to go into battle, and I'm scared. Okay, so next week, there will be stuff. I don't even know at this point. No, I do know. There'll be another episode of Blister Reviews. I'll be taking a look at Lost Dimensions from Atlas, and I'll also be reviewing the new Etrian Odyssey as well in the next week or two. So, a couple more episodes of Blister Reviews to look forward to, and then we're almost done with July, so that will mean in August, the July reviews of Secret Wars, and I promise they're going to come along a lot quicker than the June one did. It just, July, June, they've been crazy months in terms of news and all that stuff and big events happening, but August should be more laid back, more chilled out, and easier to balance things out, shall we say. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to head over to unrepentantgeeking.com to see the latest episode of Blistered Reviews, where I take a look at the new Sega release, Timbo the Badass Elephant, a 2D speed-based mascot platformer in the vein of the classic Sonic the Hedgehog series. You can also find that review over at Channel Awesome if you'd prefer that side as well. And, as always, I'd like to, again, thank you for watching, but also ask that if you enjoyed this, please rate and review this if you're seeing it on iTunes, or head on over to unrepentantgeeking.com to a link to my Patreon. Even just a couple bucks a month could be a big help in me keeping the lights on and expanding the show, doing more and more of the good stuff that I enjoy to do and you hopefully listen to. So please, head on over to unrepentantgeeking.com and check out the Unrepentant Geeking Patreon. We've got multiple levels of rewards, including making me suffer through pretty much anything you want, well, within reason. If you really want to see me review Sharknado, Patreon's the way to do it. For money, I will watch Sharknado, but, you're only going to see that if you support the Patreon. So, head on over, unrepentantgeeking.com. Alright, until next time, for Unrepentant Geeking, I'm Shaun Cronenfeld, wishing you all long days and pleasant nights. Till next time.